Hello friends, it's Elagatua, and I'm back after another long absence. This one was mostly due to just not having a lot of stuff to talk about. I've got some ideas planned for some future videos, but we did finally have a tournament game resolve. It's not in the Smacky Cup 4, it is in the Smacky Cup 5, because we are already looping around to another Smacky Cup kicking off, and today we are going to be going over my first round matchup. First round in Smacky Cup 5 is on the map called Far East El Dorado. This is a new map, and there's some interesting things going on with the COs and with the map itself. So, per tradition, we will be breaking this one down in detail. The first thing that we should talk about, this is a Tier 4 asterisk matchup. So we have our normal Tier 4 COs, but we also have Lash being moved into Tier 4 when she is not normally available as a Tier 4 pick. So we'll talk about that more later, but as we analyze this map, it is worth thinking about that Lash is an option for us to choose, and that will affect how the matches develop. So let's start off by looking at our bases and kind of our reinforced paths here. So player 1 is going to be down here, and actually let me turn on full vision until we actually get into the replay so we can see our starting infantry for player 2. So bases here and here, and then we've got a third base up here. And what immediately jumps out is that we have this river that kind of blocks off a lot of the land reinforced routes for most of these bases. So the way this breaks down into the fronts is this base is going to be pushing towards the right, and this center base here, this back base, for vehicles, you have to send vehicles this way and kind of go the same route as the other base. But you do have the option to kind of flex infantry and go across the river and push infantry towards this front here. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic where, you know, this will ultimately become kind of your third base because it's so far in the back. But vehicles can go one way, and infantry often will go the other way just because it's a pretty fast reinforce the other direction. Although the infantry movement is a little bit inefficient due to this river being you know, the third square away. So if you're moving infantry towards the north, you have to stop on this forest and then kind of leap across the river that way and then continue on. So you're losing kind of 2 tiles of efficiency that you would normally get if the terrain weren't so unfriendly. Additionally, we got this base here, and the interesting thing with this base is that it's reasonably far forward, and when it comes to a lot of the area of the map, like up here, the reinforce is very, very quick. There's no forest, you know, blocking the reinforced routes, so you can reinforce, you know, up this direction, or even in this direction, and be totally unhindered by any. This base kind of comes online later than your normal neutral base does on most maps, and so the fast reinforce of this area is kind of offset by the fact that it's only going to be, you know, day 5 or so before you're actually able to start producing units from this base. And so even though the positioning is very good, you can't really use it to send early vehicles to contest this part of the map because you're just capturing it so late that you often are going to be wanting to make infantry from this base at the beginning so you can start getting all these captures and start getting some infantry up so that you can push in this direction rather than having a bunch of early vehicles. Additionally, because these bases are totally kind of blocked off from each other, in terms of vehicles, you have very strongly defined strong sides and weak sides, especially early on. So figuring out which one is the strong side and which one is the weak side is pretty straightforward, because you have two bases that can push this way and one base that can push this way. And obviously these two bases don't need to get captured. And so this one's only gonna be starting later. So you tend to push this way very quickly early on because you're churning out units from the very beginning in this direction, and the vehicles can only go in that direction. But then later on, you start getting stuff going from this base, and you start getting vehicles reinforcing very quickly from this base. And it's one of those situations where this side is strong side very early, but actually the later the game goes, this side can become more attractive if you're building air units from here and quickly reinforcing vehicles from here as well, and then pumping infantry from this base going over here. You can kind of match the strong side from player 2 from your weak side later on. I think that about covers the bases for the most part. Let's talk about the airport. The airport is back here, kind of nestled almost in the corner, but importantly behind this pipe seam and this pipe here. So any reinforcements that you make from the airport are going to have to loop around this direction and then either go back up here towards the weak side or go to the right towards the strong side. And you have this little pipe corner here that kind of forces you to pick a side, so you can't just like stick it on this corner and have the option of sending it either way. You kind of need to choose, like, okay, this copter is going to the weak side or it's going to the strong side, and you're kind of forced in that direction. This pipe seam is a little bit weird. It's kind of almost like bait, because you would think that maybe it's worth killing to speed up your copter reinforce towards the north, but the reality is that it's very, very difficult to kill compared with the value that it provides. If you want to hit it with artillery, you can't hit it with artillery from this base because you can't get close enough with artillery on this river. And if you want to hit it from an artillery from this base, then the artillery has to go up a tile to like here and then start shelling the pipe seam. But if the artillery's here, then it's not going to fight anything. So it's really kind of a large commitment to kill that pipe seam just to make it more efficient for copters to reinforce this way. So realistically, you shouldn't really ever be killing this pipe seam, and it's just there to get in your way and taunt you with the fact that if you wasted a lot of time and initiative, you could make your reinforce more efficient, but you shouldn't ever make your reinforce more efficient on this map. It is a bad investment of your resources. So that's, I think, most of the things we can talk about for the airport. It is pretty far back, but because of the weirdness of the terrain on this map, it can be nice to have copters even at a pretty decently high rate, because they have a lot of movement flexibility that the rest of your forces don't. Generally, once you build a vehicle from one of these bases, it's kind of committed to the front in its direction that you built it from. But the copters, you build the copter and then you can kind of send it like over here to this mountain, and then you have like another turn to decide, okay, I want to send it this way or I want to send it this way based on where you need it most. So there's some strategic flexibility with the airport that your bases are not going to provide you. Now let's talk about the port. Port is here, and the port is a little bit weirdly positioned because in order to get infantry over to the port, you kind of have to send like the infantry here, and then they've got to go kind of across the river, and then over here this way to the port. And it has been a subject of discussion about whether it is worthwhile to build a lander on this map and I think Cant Bay in particular has said that a lander is a really good idea on this map, and I am here to hard disagree with that. I think landers are not good on this map, and let's spend a minute and talk about why. I think when you have to think about if a lander is good or not, there is really a few considerations. So one is the price of the lander is pretty expensive, so it needs to be able to justify its price and kind of compensate for the vehicles that you could be making if you didn't build the lander. Another is reinforced speed. So how much is the lander going to speed up your vehicle push or your infantry push on a given front? Is it cutting an entire tank move? Is it cutting less than a tank move? Is it cutting more than a tank move? Because if you're moving your units up by more than a tank move, then it's much more likely to be cost effective, since you may be investing the money in the lander that prevents you from building tanks for a turn, but the tanks you build the next turn get to the front a turn faster. So it kind of like replaces the tanks that would have been there before, and so it kind of, spending the money ends up kind of canceling itself out because you're getting those tanks where they need to go more quickly. And then later on, obviously, there's some longer term benefits with infantry and things like that. So that's something that you need to calculate as well. And let's just take a minute and kind of do those calculations. So the first issue that makes this port not as good as, for example, Frostleaf, is a map where I think the lander is so good that you're kind of forced to make it. Is this port is not next to the bases. So like, for example, if the port was here, I mean, obviously it'd be a kind of a silly place for a port to be so close to the base, but hypothetically, if the port was here instead of here, then your lander would be able to be used the turn after it's built. Instead, if you build the lander here, the next turn, you've got to send it all the way over to, this square, and then the next turn you can load up units and send them either back to here or over here or over here. These are your three kind of landing spots. So how much does that actually speed up? Well, so really your base that is really far back here is this base. So if you build a unit from here, normally it's going to be able to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like around here, right? So this is like 2 tank moves from the back base. Instead, you're getting the units here because they unload here, and so now this is 2 tank moves. Or sorry, this is 1 tank move rather, because it's moving on here and it's getting dumped here. So this is 1 tank move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. So like around here. So this is 2 tank moves from the lander roughly. So that is, I mean, it's further than here, and on this front here, the unload happens here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on this front, you're looking at like here for your second tank move, which is, oops, mouse wheel. I need to really unbind the mouse wheel on this. I think it happens way too much. Yeah, see, every single time. Oh, I think it's my zooming. It's my telestrator that's doing this. It's not even the map editor. It's the telestrator that does that. Maybe I can unbind that. Anyway, something for another time. So from this base, you're getting some value because you're kind of like almost a half tank move ahead. Like this is 1, 2, 3, 4. You're moving about 2/3 of a tank move up from where you'd normally be if you're going to the center of the map. Now, if you're going to like this side, it's not as good. And if you're going to, and obviously you then have the ability to send tanks from this base up towards this side when you didn't before. Normally your vehicles would have to come from this base to go up towards the weak side, but if you have a lander, then you could send it from this back base as well. Or really, if you want to go crazy, you could send vehicles from all 3 bases up towards that weak side. But realistically, we are not getting a full tank moves improvement for your lander purchase. So the other main problem is that when you don't really have a need to be building a lot of vehicles from this base because of the total income on the map. Oftentimes you're going to be doing like vehicle, infantry here in your 3rd base, and then like copter, something like that. So the value of being able to deploy a 3rd vehicle and get to the front very quickly, or at least get it there more quickly, is not super high. Like you're just not constrained by your bases that much. The income is low enough on the map that you can't really build like 3 vehicles and then an air unit as well. So having that third base's vehicle, you know, the flexibility is just not super important because oftentimes you're just going to be building infantry from there anyway. So for all those reasons, there is some value in getting units like to this center area more quickly. So it's not completely worthless, but it is a substantial investment. And when you build a lander, that turn that you build the lander, your income is like roughly 22, 23, 24K on this map when it's split. So you are going to be sacrificing, you know, potentially 2 vehicles, like a recon and a tank, on that turn, and you're not going to see any payoff for 2 turns. So you are creating kind of a timing window for your opponent where they're going to have more consistent vehicle reinforces to all their fronts, and you're going to have this little gap. And if your opponent is able to exploit that, then it can be very, very counterproductive for you to give your opponent. And I just strategically, I don't feel like it really accomplishes that much. I guess maybe if you're like trying to push these 2 cities and you just really want like a ton of vehicles in the middle, but how much worse is it really than just sending units like up this way? Especially if you just, instead of building a lander, you just focus on tanks from these 2 bases and send them to the middle through here. To me, it seems largely the same. So you're kind of spending money for not a whole lot of benefit. So anyway, that's a long way to say I'm not really a believer in the lander on this map. I don't think it's very good. And I think that if you're playing against somebody of an equal skill level, it creates a window for them to exploit. And I don't think there's a lot of advantage that it creates for you. But I'm sure that some people will disagree strongly with that. That's fine. You may have your own opinion, but I'm just not a believer. Okay. Let's spend a moment to talk about the comm towers. So we've got comm towers here, and it should come as very little surprise who the comm towers belong to. This one being player 1's, this one being player 2's. There's one interesting thing about the comm towers though, and that is this area of the map, after the early game, and especially after the mid game, kind of becomes a no man's land, because you're going to send some infantry here early on to capture all these properties. But then after that, your bases are reinforcing, you know, in this direction, and also very strongly in this direction. So it's very awkward to like send units, this way and then all the way like back this way. It's kind of awkward, and there's not really any reason to, because your opponent, it's very hard for your opponent to attack here as well. Like, what are they going to do? They're come here and then go all the way down this way. It's pretty long in terms of reinforce, and like this gap here, all like these properties are pretty far behind the middle diagonal of the map, so it's not like these are super contested based on their layout. So this area kind of tends to clear out after the mid game, and really the fastest reinforce is going to be from this base, coming over towards here. So these comm towers are relatively safe. They can be harassed, but not for long, because if you try to invest too much in them, then reinforce from this base is just going to overwhelm you and cause a bad fight, just because it's within 2 tank moves of this base. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so you're well within 2 tank range of this base. But there are, once the infantry kind of clear out of there, it does tend to be kind of a blank area. So it can be an area where, especially if you control the middle, this center tile is within 3 squares of all of these cities. So it can be kind of a thing that you kind of sneak attack, hoping that your opponent is out of position. But if you're just kind of in an all-out brawl with your opponent, you're never going to really make it into this area to like flip a comm tower. It's you just can't maintain control over that area for very long, and so these are relatively safe comm towers, and those are the only comm towers on the map. So talk about comm towers, all the deployment buildings. Let us get to, actually, before we go to the contested cities, let's talk a moment about the HQs. I really like this HQ positioning. So it's here and it's here, and it's just kind of behind, a little bit of a spoiler, but these 2 cities end up being a pretty strong area of contention. So with how defined the fronts are, with how well defined the fronts are, if things get out of control where one player pushes really, really strong in this direction and it becomes dominant, then oftentimes the other side will get kind of flipped as well. And so even though this is relatively far back, it is not crazy for like player 1 to really win a fight in this area and then steamroll hard enough to actually put this HQ in danger. And there are some funnels here around the HQ, like this forest tile in particular. If you can get a unit into this forest tile, like just sit a tank there, it makes it really difficult to try and get to defend this HQ if player 1's death ball is there, because you can kind of put something here and then you kind of put something on this tile and kind of build the wall like this way, and it's not super easy for player 2 to fight into that formation. So HQ captures are not impossible by any means, and there's no black boat on the HQ. So you do sometimes see some Sammy play, because Sammy thinks, oh, I can get infantries kind of along this line and then victory march and put this HQ in danger. So that's I think this HQ is in a real sweet spot where it's close enough to the front where it can be threatened reasonably, but it's far enough back that it's not in any real danger unless your front on that side really gets crushed. So I do like it a lot, because oftentimes you have HQs that are just either so far back or they've got the black boat, and it's just never really a factor. But on this map, they hit that balance really well. So I do like that a lot. I think that's pretty cool. Let's talk about contested cities. So we've got a lot of cities that are kind of along the center line. I'm just going to highlight some that are, you know, relatively contested, and then we'll kind of go into more detail about what I think is truly contestable. So we got like these corner cities, we got these two, and we got these four in the middle. I drew that a little wide, right? Okay, so it's these cities are the candidates, but not all these are as contested as the others. So let's talk about the most contested. It's going to be this one and this one. These are the number one most contested cities on this map. And these corners are actually really interesting because the terrain is kind of awkward. You've got a lot of roads and a lot of bridges. So there's a lot of low defense terrain, and then obviously the river going through here. So there's a lot of low defense terrain, and there's some infantry mobility, but the vehicle mobility is really low because obviously they can't drive across the river. But there are really two kind of high value tiles here with high defense, and really in these corners, whoever controls these two tiles and here really controls the corner. It's just once you've got stuff on these two tiles, it's very difficult for your opponent to fight into that efficiently, because if you got a tank on the city, then your opponent has to like kill it with stuff from here, but then like you don't have any more units available. There's no more space available to take whatever's on that tile. So you have to be very careful fighting in the corners and really pay attention to the positioning. And additionally, this city, like once you get an infantry on this city, it's very difficult to clear it off, because sure, you can hit it with a unit here, but if you want to clear it in one turn, then you need to have access to either one of these two tiles that are behind the river. And so like you're never going to have like, as player 2, you're never going to have like access around here. That's really unlikely. And then this would be infantry only or with air units. So so these tiles, and especially this one, very positional, kind of hard to take, but once you get it, relatively easy to hold on to, as long as you commit forces to actually do it. That being said, this map does tend to be a map where things tend to snowball in terms of the fronts. So if you get wiped out on this front, then you kind of lose these cities, and then maybe later on you end up reinforcing it, and then you kind of get control over this whole area and you're able to take it back. But it's a good thing to try and deny your opponent capturing, because you may need to devote significant resources to those cities in order to get them back once they've been taken by your opponent. You kind of need to win the whole front in order to maintain enough control to grab them. Let's talk about these two cities, and especially this one. So I'd say, so we said this one is number one most contested. We'll call this one second most contested, just because it can kind of go if the sides snowball, if the front snowballs. Let's look at these two cities here. So this one, I'm tempted, it's either a 2 or a 3. I'm going to call it a 2. The reason that it's a 2 is it is relatively far away, and so if you don't get it early enough, then what can happen is this forest tile here is very good for player 1 to put an artillery in and just lock this city. And this area especially is kind of a zone of death, and if you're player 2, you don't really want to be pushing in here. And if you're player 1, you don't really want to be pushing past this line as well, because you get this forest tile and this forest tile, and you end up having like a lot of units on the road, and you got all this high defense terrain here, so you don't really want to cross that line. So if you're able to get an artillery here as player 1 and they haven't got the city yet, you can kind of keep it neutral very indefinitely. And then, so if we draw our numbers again. So 1, 2, we're going to call this 2, and we're going to call this one a 3. It's a 3 for pretty much all the same reasons that this one is a 2, except that there's no forest that can artillery lock the city, but it is close enough that if you have a lot of infantry in the area, you can kind of trickle infantry in to deny this city. And also, if you snowball this front, these are 2 cities that are going to be the first on the chopping block. All right. This city, I'm not really sure what to make of this city. I kind of want to say it is, I'm going to call it a 3 as well. So, city is kind of a dangerous city because you can see all the 4 tiles around it are all 0 defense tiles. So, if you're trying to clear stuff off this city, like an enemy infantry or something like that, you're very susceptible to getting counterattacked, especially if you're using something like a recon. Very likely, one tank can come in and just one-shot your recon. So that's something that you need to be aware of. That being said, if you get something on the city, then your opponent has the same issue, where if they're trying to clear your infantry off, then they're on these roads, which are low defense as well, and so that can potentially swing the fight in your favor. That being said, fighting on this line here is a little bit, it's smidge overextendy for player 1. So I think it's not nearly as easy to deal with compared with the corners. And it is also close enough to the center that you can see the reinforce come in from the other base. So you do have more bases that are able to support this city as opposed to cities in the corner where you're very clearly you're fighting reinforcements from the 2 bases here in the corner. But here you could potentially be fighting from all 3. And here as well, this one is, so if the other ones are 3s, we'll draw our final circles and numbers, right? So 2, 1, 2, 3, 3. So this one is a 4. This one would be probably the hardest one to take. Again, all the terrain around it, for the most part, is low defense. So fighting into that city as player 1 is not going to be super attractive, and you're fighting into directly into reinforcements from both bases. So it is kind of dangerous. It's very easy to get sandwiched in there. So be aware of taking that city. So those are the kind of 6 contested-ish cities on this map. But it's a pretty good number, and as with any map, when the contested cities are far enough away, it tends to lead to some very dynamic play because it's very hard to exert control over all of the contested cities at once across the whole map when they are very spread out. One last thing to talk about on this map is the center lab. Now, I really love maps that have center lab for tournament play because this lab kind of acts as a tiebreaker, and if someone bothers to capture it, then it saves our admins the trouble of having to figure out who is winning, because it counts as a property, and whoever has more properties when the time limit or the day limit hits wins. And this lab is there to make their life easy. So it's nice terrain in the center. Obviously, all the terrain around it is low defense, so it's a good thing to control. A great place for recons if you are able to control the center area. And yeah, if you feel like you have control of the center, it's worth capturing for the vision. And since this is right now being played as a tournament map, it's not something that you just ignore like you would in a global league match. So I think we're through all the features of the map. Let's talk about our tier 4 COs. So we do have Lash in this tier, and Lash is generally not pickable in tier 4 because Lash gets +10 attack per defense star, which basically means Lash is kind of like Super Jake, where Lash gets the grass bonus on all of her ground units, in addition to getting plus 20% in forests and plus 30% on cities. So you're kind of like your Jake with also like kind of a mini Kindle day-to-day. So the day-to-day is very, very strong for Lash. And so if you're attacking, cities with tanks that have grass next to them, then Lash is going to get all the benefits of that plus 20 attack bonus. And that's a very important threshold if you're familiar with the math, because plus 20 on infantry, 2 infantry clear an infantry from a city, plus 20 on 2 tanks clears a tank on a city without any rolls. So that's why those are important in case you haven't heard that one before. That's one to be very familiar with. So Lash hits those thresholds very easily, and Lash infantry also benefit from that as well, in addition to Lash tanks. Lash air, unfortunately, do not really benefit, but at least there's no penalty to Lash's air. And this generally makes Lash very, very strong, and probably too strong for tier 4 normally. But on this map in particular, there is a substantial amount of low defense terrain to the point where Lash kind of stinks on this map compared to with her power on a normal map. So if we look at like the areas that you want to be fighting over, like in this corner here, there's a tremendous amount of 0 terrain star terrain, with the exception of kind of like the cities here. Like that's it. Pretty much everything else is just roads. And for these 2 cities, the tiles that you would be attacking those cities from, it's all road, so it's not going to help Lash. And this city here, everything around it, 0 defense stars, so no attack bonus for Lash. And this one as well is surrounded by three sides with no bonus for Lash. So the terrain is really bad for Lash's attack bonus compared with maps that are more heavily grass or forests or cities or what have you, missile silos, whatever. So because Lash kind of struggles to get any sort of extra attack bonus in areas around a lot of the contested cities, the tournament admins made Lash a pick for tier 4 on this map because she is just so poorly suited for the terrain on this map. That being said, there still is a lot of cities and some missile silos as well, and so even though there are some places, like there's a lot of places that Lash really will not benefit, there are still places on the map that Lash will be very strong. And just in general, Lash is a very good CO against early game harass because if you get harassed by recons, then you counterattack with a tank from a city. That recon is going to be blown up because the city will provide Lash with the plus 30% bonus. So Lash still a strong CO, but does not have any CO powers that are going to provide bonus movement. And I think that's where Lash struggles. So in my opinion, there's really 2 COs that are clearly a bit above the rest, and that is Lash and Jess. I think those are the 2 most common picks, and correctly so. In tier 4, I've said this a number of times. Generally speaking, in tier 4, the better player just ends up winning regardless of CO choice. That because the power level between all the COs is balanced relatively well, generally speaking, it doesn't matter too much who you play. And I would agree with that in this matchup as well. But Lash and Jess have very different incentives on this map, and it kind of creates interesting dynamics. Lash really wants to control the terrain, especially these 2 tiles on both sides. If Lash can get on those tiles and then force the fights on those tiles for those tiles, it's going to be really good for Lash. Additionally, Lash doesn't really want to be fighting into these cities on this road. Lash either wants to be chilling back here, Or if Lash is going to attack, Lash needs to get to these cities and then also like control this terrain and get into the grass here so that the fight happens here. But you kind of want to play don't touch the lava with these squares and with these squares. And then also Lash really has absolutely nothing to gain from the center. And so Lash predominantly wants to stay in the corners. Because if any sort of vehicle fights break out in the center cities, Lash is gonna, there's no way that Lash is gonna get much benefit from that in terms of the bonus damage. So that's just not great for Lash. So Lash wants to stay out of the center if possible. And the exact same thing is true in reverse for Jess. Jess is gonna have a great mobility with the CO powers and with the superpowers. So Jess really would like to own the middle and then pivot to either one side or the other. And because these two fronts are so kind of separated off, Jess wants to kind of own the middle and then be able to consolidate her forces and then pick a side and really crush the force on one side and then maybe pivot back to the middle and then go towards the other side and just have the stronger death ball and try to fight kind of two fronts against one as best as possible. Because Jess doesn't really have anything to fear from fighting in the middle. Jess's tanks are going to be doing a lot of damage no matter what. It's Lash who has to be careful and will not get benefits from contesting the middle, at least from the attacks, the attack bonuses. So I think that's a little bit of insight into how both COs want to play this one. I think maybe Jess's game plan is a little bit easier to execute, but I feel, this is just my intuition, I've only played one game on this map. I feel like the better you are, the better Lash becomes. So maybe like the skill ceiling is higher on Lash, and maybe like once you get to the 1600, 1500 level, like Lash becomes better than Jess. But Jess's game is much simpler because Jess can kind of play normally, and Lash really has to do a lot of planning and a lot of positional work and really be strategically sound in order to squeeze enough benefit of those terrain bonuses and being very precise in where her army is to create bad fights for Jess to be able to really crush and dominate the map. And so that just, you have to be good in order to be able to do that, or you have to plan well, things like that. And if you're playing very casually or very quickly, then Lash is probably not the choice for you on this map because it's hard. So that's my insight into the COs. I've seen picks of almost everything. I will say that Cole is kind of a bait pick on this map. Anytime you see a lot of roads, people are like, oh, I'll pick Cole because I'm going to fight on the roads. But actually, if you look at like the corners, like look at all these bridges. Like Cole does not get the road bonus from the bridges. So I really think Cole is kind of a bait pick on this map. So probably don't pick Cole, but pick Lash, pick Jess, or pick one of the other COs if you want. If you're better, you're probably going to win anyway, so don't sweat it too much. And with that being said, I think we have finally exhausted all of our topics on the map. Let us get into the actual game now that we have rambled for 45 minutes. All right, let's get going here. So start things off, we'll kind of breeze through the first couple of days. We want to send this infantry over this way. There's no need to go for this city first. We can pick that up with the later infantry, but we want to send our first infantry out on the map so that they are going to have ability to chain to other cities. And this is a good map to talk about which cities to go for. So when you start here, after this is done, you're going to moving 3 squares, and you want to, I guess you could also go here too. So you want to go for one of these 2 cities and not this one, just because they're farther away. And so that will get you further out on the map and down the line that will have beneficial effects. That's just kind of a general principle of openers. But we're going to be getting infantry for the first couple of turns, and we do need to send. Oh, I forgot we can. I don't know why I said this was 3 turns away. This is it's 2 turns away. So fake news in the map review. It's been a while since I played the first round of this game, like almost a month. So I forgot that you can actually get there in 2 turns. Well, anyway, regardless, so 2 turns away, and we're going to be heading over and trying to get this airport next, because there's a nice little chain here. On the terrain getting to the airport with infantry is kind of awful, so you have to make them wait a turn. And we're not going to try and send this infantry up this way. We're just going to be trying to use this infantry as efficiently as possible, because spoilers, we're going to be going for an APC opener this game. There's our APC, and we built the APC this turn so that we can take this infantry that we've kind of sent, out of the way, and instead of having him be awkwardly stuck where he's got to like find a way to go towards the right side, and like not sit on top of the base with his full movement. Now this infantry can just kind of go into this APC and get slingshot somewhere to start getting caps. I think APC is really, really good for player 1 on this map, and there's a few reasons for that. One, we'll get to in a couple of turns, but it accelerates a few caps, but also just the distance from these 2 bases to where all the caps are is pretty long. And so having an APC to kind of shuttle infantry over this way really is helpful, and the longer the game goes on, the more valuable that's going to be. There's a lot of cities that are like 4 squares away. You see these like 4, 4, 4, 4. So if you're able to accelerate those captures by boosting, things like that, you can get to cities faster than you could otherwise. And if you're getting to cities faster, that's kind of free money that's offsetting the cost of the APC. But lastly, I think one of the biggest reasons why the APC is very good is actually the income curve for player 2 really leads very naturally into a tank opener. And so when you have an opponent that's often going to go into a tank opener, having a greedy opener, like a transport opener or like APCs or something like that, is kind of the natural counter to the tank opener. Tank openers generally don't have vision to be able to harass. They're more of a defensive opener to defend against any early harass against their infantry. So we kind of metagame around that by assuming that, okay, our opponent might go for a tank, but if they go for a tank, then they're not going to be able to punish greed out of the APC build. And so it's a little bit of kind of rock, paper, scissors meta going on there, but I think in this case, it's kind of an informed risk, and we'll see if our opponent ends up going a tank later on. But there's some more nuances beyond what I just mentioned that we'll get to in a couple of turns. But for now, we are going to be getting this APC. And now you can see, so we're going up here with this guy, and then this guy is going to come get this city, and this guy is going to go here so that he can go here efficiently. And then this also lets me load in an infantry into this APC next turn. So it's like, it's kind of a twofer. Like, we're definitely accelerating this guy, getting him to a city next turn, and also the next infantry is also going to be able to get to a city next turn. It's just really efficient. And now we're starting to get infantry out of this north base as well. So this is the exact reason why the APC is so good. So you put the APC here, and then you can take infantry all the way to your HQ, And then these two contested cities are just one infantry move away. So that is a really, really powerful piece of kind of movement math that benefits the APC. I think in general, I don't really like APC openers because they are a vehicle unit that is being built from a base. And if you're going to build a transport unit, you'd rather have a T-copter so that you aren't sacrificing an infantry that would have been built from that base. But in this situation, because the airport is so slow to get capped, like we'd only be able to build a transport for the from the airport this turn when we're already getting value out of the APC because we built it earlier. Just due to the terrain of the map. I think that this is one of those rare situations where an APC is quite a strong opening. There is, however, one caveat to that, and that is the APC is kind of so good that your opponent, if they're savvy, they could try to anticipate it. And we are making kind of a blind leap to both of these cities without vision. Additionally, we don't have any kind of protection out on the map. And so if I did calculate it out, and if your opponent builds a recon the first turn that they have access to build something out of this base, they can basically make it here in time to interrupt your caps. And if they do that, there's literally no way that you can have a tank to protect those caps and also have the APC. So it's kind of like if they see anything capturing these two cities with that build, they know they can get a free interrupt of it, and it really kind of punishes the APC. So for what it's worth, that's kind of the only build that can really, really punish this opener. And it's a build that requires economic sacrifice from the opponent. So I felt like it was pretty unlikely. But if you saw a map like this in Global League, you might start to see people get more in tune with the meta and which openers are good, and start to kind of blind go for that build as player 2 to punish a build like this. There's also an APC build for player 2 that was pretty interesting, and if you're interested in that, I would check out Degis's round 1 game. He does the APC opener as player 2, and there's a line where basically he can get to this city very quickly as player 2. And this city normally would belong to player 1. It's kind of a nice city to get early because if you get it, you can kind of park that infantry there, and it's very difficult to remove. So there's also a greed option for player 2, but I think the tank option is the most straightforward, and that was the one that I was anticipating. Anyway, so I am taking a little bit of a risk here, but we're going to be going for this city because we want to get this city locked down as quickly as possible to prevent any situations where our opponent goes for an early artillery and tries to control these forests and locks down that city. If we capture the city, then we don't really care if our opponent puts an artillery here, because they can just point an artillery at a city with nothing on it, and we can counterattack to keep it safe. I do think this capture chain is very nice because it makes things very simple in terms of the infantry responsibility. This guy is going to end up going here, and this guy is going to end up going here, this guy is going to end up going here, and this guy is going to end up going here. So it's a very straightforward chain, I guess. We are kind of sacrificing these properties by doing this, but we're never going to lose those properties. We're always going to, they can get delayed, and those properties are going to be with the responsibility of this infantry, because this guy can come over to here, and then he can go up to here, and then that's 3 moves over to the port. So it's kind of very efficient infantry movement for everybody. And then these guys can kind of go north. This guy can come here, and really from this point, the opener kind of plays itself for the most part. And really the attention is going to start to shift to this side, where we got to figure out how we're going to secure our properties over there. I actually thought about building this tank from this back base. I don't know. It's an option that you can do. Building the tank from the forward base, obviously it's nice to have your tanks be able to go as far forward as possible, but I did some of the calculations and I don't think having the tank built from the back base really hurts me in terms of defending properties. Like, I think it can defend all the properties that I want to defend just as easily as if it were built here, and then if you have an infantry from the front base instead, then it can get into the APC a little more quickly and get like a free boost. But I decided just to play it safe and build it from the front base just to avoid an issue of like anything that I maybe didn't consider. It seems like it'd be really silly if I built it from the back base and then all of a sudden like I needed it to be further forward. So anyway, so we're able to get to the city, not getting interrupted. We should never really get interrupted on that property. I think the worst that could happen is this turn, a recon could potentially show up if we're getting the hard counter version of the build. So we're gonna ignore this city. We'll pick this one up with this guy. I want to get this guy up here so that I can contest like this area more quickly. I don't want to give up this city for free, and I'm thinking maybe if this guy gets done, then he can go here, and then he can go here, and maybe I can focus more on the top left, especially considering my vehicles from here are going to reinforce much more quickly to this side. So maybe this weak side will be my more aggressive front, and I'll kind of rely on the infantry push from the APC over here, and maybe not build as many vehicles on the strong side. So we get double recon. We need to get an infantry from this front base so that we can use the APC. So we're building the recon from the back base instead, and we just want one recon for each side, just to get an idea of what's going on. And this will allow us, we're gonna really focus hard on these two corners, and so we wanna lock down vision, make sure that no infantry can sneak in there without us seeing it first so that we can contest. Okay, so we see nothing, which is what we would expect to see, which means we're gonna finish this capture, which is great. And so we come onto the city here so that we can make sure that there's no recon that's going to be blocking the city next turn. And we send him here, again, just to make sure that we're not getting trolled, because you could send an early recon to block this city. So we're not really using this recon as an aggressive recon. It's mostly just a safety recon. It's a little bit cowardly, but that's okay. Because we could have moved this recon one square further had we moved the infantry first, but we're just trying to play nice and sane, and then this guy's going to go get the comm tower. So you can kind of see how all the infantry are getting to their assigned locations as quickly as possible and handling their the captures that they're responsible for. And then we're getting artillery on this side. Artillery is really nice. Some of this is due to funding curves. Actually, if we look at my money, it's 14K. And so that's, if I want to build 2 tanks, I need to base skip. Having an artillery on this side is really nice. For one, you can place an artillery over here on one of these protected squares, and it's going to cover both of these contested properties and make it really, really difficult to fight in. Additionally, Lash artillery on cities gets the bonus to damage, so that's really, really strong. And additionally, Lash can put an artillery here on these planes and just lock this city forever. It's really, really hard for an artillery here to be attacked. So there's just a lot of options for artillery to get value on this side. You really use one artillery to kind of lock down any sort of aggression against any of these three cities just by ping-ponging back kind of along this diagonal here. It's less good for attacking, because if you want to attack, you kind of need to expose it and maybe like put it on these cities, which is not quite as nice, but defensively it's really good. And we're kind of thinking like we're a little bit split, right? Like we've got, you know, half our vehicles here and we're starting to build up some vehicles here. So we're thinking maybe we want to be more kind of defensive on here, like kind of get these cities and then rely on our infantry defensively. The terrain favors defense of these cities very, very nicely. See, all these are plains, which are going to give us the plus 10% extra damage. So we kind of want to defend these cities and attacking. I mean, this one, it's okay. There's some good terrain around it, but we don't really want to fight too much over this city unless we're like really, really winning. And these two cities are kind of overextension bait as well. So staying on, like, you know, don't cross this line without a good reason. That's generally the way to go, at least for Lash. Okay, onward. Cycling through his turn. Okay, so we again see nothing, which again is not super surprising. If we're anticipating a tank opener, then seeing nothing is what we would expect to see. So we're kind of thinking, it's probably a tank opener, but we'll see if our recons can see anything this turn, because at least this recon is going to start to get into some territory where it might actually see some stuff. Again, doing our normal captures, we send this guy down to here, is we're going to send this guy into the APC. And we send this guy into the APC, we can actually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and leave him here. And then there's a potential for us to get cute and maybe steal this corner property. And then we can use this infantry to steal, well, not really steal, because this corner kind of belongs to us, at least that property. But this guy goes here and then caps that, and this guy goes here and caps that, and then the APC is here. So this gives us like it's kind of maximum greed. And if our opponent, you know, open tank on like both sides, it's definitely possible that we could end up with infantry on both of those cities. And that's a really great place to initiate fights. If you have both of, even if you don't end up capturing the cities, whatever is going to remove your infantry from those cities is going to have to be next to a city. And Lash wants to be on the cities for that attack bonus. So that's a really good way to initiate a fight. So that's our plan. Hello there, sir. What are you doing here? So this is awkward. Was not expecting this. I kind of went back after seeing this and I was like, how did he get here? There's not supposed to be an infantry there. And what I realized is I think, so you get like your first infantry here, and then he goes here, caps this city, and then goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So this infantry being here required skipping a city. I'm not thrilled that infantry is there, because if there's any sort of vehicle in this area, this infantry is going to come here, hit my infantry, and then the other vehicle is just going to come on this bridge and kill this infantry. And it is very, very dangerous for me to fight on this bridge. And the reason for that is tank chaining from this base is going to lead to serious issues for me where I can't continue fighting. So I have one tank, I have no tanks behind this to back him up. And if you look at the reinforce rates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the city. There's one tank move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So imagine this infantry comes here, attacks, and then a recon comes here and finishes off my infantry. Then the next turn, I kill the recon with a tank, or get it low, but probably kill it, because I could use like this infantry to finish off the recon. So okay, so I've lost an infantry in this case, but then I kill a recon. But then if Jess is following up with tanks after that, then my tank here gets hit with a two-turn reinforced tank on the bridge, and I've got no further follow-up. So like the trading becomes really, really bad for me. So if there's any vehicle here and Jess chooses to engage, I kind of just have to let the infantry die, and I can't really do anything about it. The one saving grace for me, though, is that because the infantry is already on the bridge, if it's going to attack this infantry, it has to move and attack first, which is going to damage the infantry, which will prevent it from getting any captures. So even if I do lose this infantry, and I kind of have to give it up, I will at least have thwarted my opponent's plan to capture this city very quickly, because the infantry will have to damage itself, and it will slow down the caps. But this is not what I was hoping to see, and I'm already in a situation where I could be losing an infantry for free because my opponent did something kind of weird and unexpected. But that's, sometimes you gotta do stuff like that in Fog. You're gonna do moves without information that your opponent could beat with their chosen opening, and that's just a part of Fog. The best you can do is kind of minimize the damage and not try to fix a small mistake by turning it into a big mistake. So we'll see what happens next turn. For what it's worth, we will learn a lot next turn, because if our opponent has a vehicle, it's very likely that we will be seeing it on this front here. We also get to move this recon here, and we see a recon over there on these cities. This is a really happy place for a recon to see, or a recon to be, rather, because it sees 1, 2, 3. So we get a really good idea of where our opponent is at in terms of their opener. If Jess has an APC opener, then we should see infantry having capped some of these cities already. You can see, like, we already have this city capped. This city is going to get capped next turn, and we know Jess has not even started caps on either of those. So we can be very confident that Jess did not go APC, which means that we're probably not in any risk of getting this property stolen, although I wasn't familiar with the APC build during the early parts of this game. And then if we see any shenanigans with this city, well, we know what's going on, and we're in position where we can deny that. Just moving tanks here. Don't have a lot of vision on this side, so we're not trying to get too crazy, just trying to play defensively. All right, let's, if you're watching with careful eyes, you may have noticed something interesting there. I base skipped. I base skipped here. So at the beginning of last turn, I have 14k again. And 14k is enough for 2 tanks, but only if you don't build an infantry. And with this infantry here, I was a little bit worried that this side might start to get steamrolled, especially if I lose that infantry for free. I felt under enough pressure that I really wanted to have tanks on both sides. It's actually not even necessarily that I wanted tanks on both sides. It's that my alternatives to building tanks are not that good, because I already have recons on both sides. I really don't want an artillery on this side also. Building 2 artilleries in the early game it kind of handcuffs your ability to, this is gonna sound like a lot of buzzwords. It limits your ability to be dynamic. You're immobile, because you always need to kind of fight around your artilleries and your artilleries are kind of fighting, or they're kind of following your army. But with tanks, you can kind of, shoot and scoot, right? You're kind of fighting and moving together. So I thought it was really important that I just have more mobility on both sides, and adding another recon or another artillery on either of the fronts was not going to be that helpful. And actually, it's much more likely that having the second tank is going to help me out in the case of a fight, much more so than sacrificing my one infantry that's going to arrive to the front on like day 12 or something like that. So we're kind of borrowing against the future. I want to have more power now so that things stay under control, and I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of infantry push later on. This is one of those situations where you kind of got to know when to break the rules. We're breaking the rules here a little bit, but we've got a good reason for it, and we're being safe in the hopes that being safe will not dig us a big hole later on. Okay. So you see a recon kind of sneak by there. And then our infantry takes a hit. But that is all. So this actually tells us a whole lot. First of all, we saw the recon come down. So there's a good chance that the recon was like here and was just not in position to be able to fight here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So like if the recon's in these woods, then it's not actually in position to attack here. Additionally, like if there was a tank on this side, we're quite confident it would come in to finish off this infantry, because you tank chaining, again, really strong on this position. Jess would love to start a tank fight on these two squares. Like that's a great place for Jess to fight. So if Jess could do that, then probably Jess would. So we can be very confident that there were no vehicles available on this side here that could reach this infantry. Otherwise we would have seen them. What that means is that we probably need to be very scared of an artillery in these forests, because if there's no vehicle that can attack that infantry, then maybe there was an early artillery built on that side that is getting in position. So we're going to play very, very scared of an artillery in here in the future, seeing we saw a recon. If there's like recon here, artillery here, then we just need to kind of chill out. We do have, we got these cities capped already, so we're not going to be under really any threat, but we're not going to really want to play too aggressive down in this corner until we know whether there's an artillery there or not. So we're just going to kind of assume that there's an artillery there for now. And on this side, we're not really in a position to harass here. Again, Lash does not want to be harassing in this area, okay? So sure, we could send the recon in here, and we even have like decent tank chain backup, but there's just no need to fight on terrain unfavorable to Lash. What we really want to do is we want to fight over here in that corner and take control over these two tiles, and we just kind of give these up because the terrain doesn't favor us. In Advance Wars, you are not obligated to take every single fight that is available to you. Okay, so we send a recon here onto the city. This basically confirms that there's a recon in the woods here. And the reason I want to send it on this city is because now we've got full vision of this tile. So if anything, if there's something here, it has to stay here. It can't move out because we'll see it if it moves out, and then we'll know whether there's an artillery there or not. So if there's like an infantry here, then we'll get vision of it and we'll be able to see. And obviously if something else moves in there, then we'll know that there's not an artillery there either. If we see nothing going in here, we kind of have to assume that maybe there's an artillery there already that's just kind of chilling, and maybe moved in there last turn when he saw the forward infantry. But it's a really nice place for a recon. We're actually going to go for the center cap here. We see the recon here, and we see the recon here. So it's pretty unlikely that Jess has vision of the center. So we can just kind of go take it, because this infantry doesn't really have anything better to do. And controlling the center property is actually quite nice. There's follow-up options to jump to either of these two cities if we see an opportunity for it later on. And it does secure that tiebreaker if the game goes long. So it's might as well go for it rather than just sitting around on a city doing nothing, which is what he would do. We have no intentions of trying to attack on this side because there's not really anything that we can reasonably contest at this time. And we actually move the tank to cover this cap, just in case there's a third recon or something like that, and just gets frosty and wants to try and remove that. We're going to cover this guy because we don't want to fight in this corner. We're out of here. We're just retreating. Forget it. I've seen enough. So we are not going to contest this corner. We'll lick our wounds. We did, as long as nothing else happens in this corner, this fight is fine for us because sure, this guy doesn't cap anything, but also this guy is not going to be able to cap anything either because he's at 8 HP, so he's going to take forever to cap any cities. So if he caps this city, that's fine. It's going to take forever. If he caps this city, it's also fine. I'm going to be able to get an artillery onto this tile next turn in case the 8 HP infantry caps it. And then I can just deny it purely with the artillery. So ultimately, even though it felt bad originally, just kind of face planting into that enemy infantry, it kind of worked out. It prevented what my opponent wanted, which was to steal this city without me getting vision of it. And in the end, it's just two infantries that traded some damage, and they're going to heal up, and it's all going to kind of reset and become nothing. So we didn't need to continue that fight. The positioning was bad for us, and we would much rather just live to fight another day and play according to the strategy that is going to be beneficial for us, not the strategy that makes us attack every time we get the opportunity to. And now that we see that we're kind of feeling weak in this corner, so now we want to be strong up here. We have been tank chaining. We've got good vision. We've got the infantry that are ready to go because we kind of city skipped to get to this city early. So now this city is captured, and now this guy is in position to fight. So that's the benefit of skipping that city. We're ready to fight one turn earlier, or maybe even 2 turns earlier than we would normally be. And now we put this recon in the woods, and we see, okay, he wants to capture this city next turn. So now we are definitely going to be in position to counter this. We are not going to let him get this city for free, and we've got the infantry to contest. So we're going to put the tank here, making sure to avoid this recon's vision, so that likely what's going to happen is this infantry is going to go here, and then the recon can go here, infantry here. This guy caps the city. So it's a really, really strong counterplay. And then this tank potentially can go here to control those 2 tiles. Because again, when we're fighting in the corners, we really want to control these 2 properties, or these 2 tiles, because they're high defense. As Lash, you got to control the high defense tiles because they are also your high offense tiles. So you've got a really good turn set up next turn if our opponent ends up trying to cap this. Because we had the vision and we got in position to anticipate that. This was an 18k turn, I think. Yeah, 18k. So 18k for the buy. It's a really good copter tank infantry. And we are choosing to spend our tank on this front because this is the side that we are anticipating a fight, because we're going to fight up here. And we're going to play defensive over here. Again, we're doing this because the terrain favors defense on this side, and the reinforces favor us on this side. So that is why we're allocating our guys the way we are. Okay, so we still, we got pretty good vision with our 2 forward recons and have a decent idea of what's happening. It's a little bit scary because we have not seen a single tank from our opponent. We know that our opponent has 2 recons, and that's it. So we're really missing a lot of information, but we can't give this up. There's no way we can give this up. And our positioning and the fact that we knew what was going to happen and that we could set up for it is going to work in our favor on this turn, because we're going to set up a really nice position. So first of all, we need to see what's going on with this city. So we see that the 8 HP infantry is going to cap this. That is perfectly fine by us because we have the artillery that we can just sit here. We don't even need to interrupt it, even though we could. We could try to fight there with that infantry, but we don't need to. So now we attack this infantry and we see a tank, which is fine. The thing we were scared of, we were actually scared of a Jess artillery being here. If a Jess artillery was on that that grass tile, that might cause us to change our plans. Seeing just a tank there, that's fine. Because we've set up this is actually a really obnoxious positioning that we've set up here. This corner, I mean, it's so difficult to fight into, because there's no way that Jess is going to have access to this tile. Like, it's just really unlikely. Jess does not want to be fighting here, because just like how we talked about earlier about how this tile is 2 tank moves from this base, well, this tile is also 2 tank moves from my base up there on the weak side. So Jess doesn't really want to put anything here because it's gonna slam into my reinforcements and activate units that couldn't fight otherwise. So if this tile is off limits, then really the only 2 tiles that can attack here are just these 2 tiles. And what are they going to do? You're going to send vehicles into infantry and not even kill the infantry, just damage them, and then also get counterattacked from the city. It's not really great. So that's why I'm emphasizing these 2 tiles are so strong. The worst that can happen for me, for the most part, unless there's like an anti-air that shows up, which would be really surprising this early, is I take some damage on my infantry, and and if Jess can't fight, then I get the city. So it's a win-win. And again, we're just chaining tanks into this corner. And we're going to send an infantry to this side. Sorry, send a copter to this side, because we only have 1 tank over here right now. This guy is this is kind of my flex tank. I'm thinking that there could be a big fight up here, and I actually want to consolidate my tanks. So I'm thinking this guy can flex over here to support the fight here, maybe win a tank fight decisively. Additionally, there's a possibility of me threatening this city. So say that we have some sort of big confrontation over here. And so probably all the vehicles for Jess are going to come this way. This actually becomes a really vulnerable city, because all the vehicles here are probably going down to this corner. And if all these vehicles are going to this corner, then there's kind of nothing in the center. And I've got this infantry on this center lab that can threaten a cap here. And if I can, clear off an infantry and then cap it, that could force Jess to have too many things to defend at once and be out of position. So we don't have to commit to this necessarily, but we're just setting up the possibility of doing something like that. One issue with this move, though, is just we don't have a recon to be able to support this in the center. So if we're going to do a move like that, we need to find some way to get vision. So So we'll deal with that next turn if things materialize. And if things don't materialize, we always have the ability just to shift it right back the other way. That's the beauty of center control. You can kind of choose which way you want to go without having to commit too hard. So now we're setting up things in the bottom right here, trying to get some value out of our APC, doing infantry boosts, and we set up the artillery in the corner so we can remove this infantry without really giving up any possibility of a counterattack. And this is a really strong defensive position here. And we go double anti-air. We really want anti-airs on both fronts eventually. And I'm feeling pretty good about the tank situation. If we get overwhelmed on this front, we have the artillery to back us up and we're in position. We're not likely to be able to, we're able to defend this city and this city and this city without necessarily needing more tanks than we have. But having an anti-air would be kind of problematic, or having a copter from our opponent would be kind of problematic for us to deal with down there. And same in the top right as well. Like, we've got 3 tanks, and we're kind of fighting this very constricted area. So the tank count doesn't actually matter as much, because the thing that's really going to matter is just the spacing and the ability to hit stuff more than the number of tanks that you have. Because if your tanks don't have room to shoot stuff, then kind of doesn't matter that you have them. So it'll be useful later, and then that will give us peace of mind to invest in more tanks and potentially tech as we lock down some additional cities. So recon comes in here, infantry comes in here, but that's good. We want infantry. We want just infantry to be fighting our infantry on cities. Like, that is a great situation for us. We like that a lot. Okay, so now this is all of a sudden a very, very, very good turn for us. Some important math to note. A Lash tank on planes will one-shot a Jess recon on a road, because it's got the +20, +10 from the planes, +10 from the comm tower. So we're gonna be able to kill that. To kill this recon very easily. We don't even need to necessarily continue this capture. The most important thing, more than even winning the capture, is just fighting efficiently and controlling the terrain. Additionally, down here, our opponent made a little bit of a mistake here. They continued to cap this city before they moved the recon. And so they move the recon down, and now they see the artillery there, but it's too late because this infantry can't move anymore. So that's, a little tiny mistake that I imagine they probably wish that they had done that in the opposite order, but we take those. So now we can clear this infantry off the city, and we're going to be able to use the firepower now from the city to also kill this infantry for free, because that's Lash power. So that's a 1-2, and already these infantry trades are really going in our favor. And despite this map being very difficult for Lash in terms of the terrain bonuses, it's our positioning that is giving us opportunities to use the few tiles that give terrain bonuses to be really, really efficient. We use the +30% bonus damage to be able to one-shot an infantry, and we used the planes here to be able, I think, because of the planes, that wasn't a roll to remove the infantry, or at least it was like substantially in our favor. And even if it was a roll, we have plenty of infantry to kind of solve any unlucky rolls. And then up here, we're going to be able to fight using the city, and then we're also going to be able to fight using this planes to get a valuable bonus 10% against the recon that's going to make it hit the kill threshold. So we just remove that infantry, and this is a guaranteed one-shot. And so that's so now we've killed 4 units. So we killed 1 infantry that was capping the city. Actually, we've killed 5 units. So we killed 2 infantry on this side, and now a recon, and we've killed 2 infantry down here. And we've lost nothing. That's a really good start to the game for us. And this infantry is... he's taken one for the team. Again, these corners are really, really constricted. So whatever is going to remove this 1 HP infantry is going to block this tile. And if that tile is blocked, then that means that nothing can hit this tank. Likewise, if something comes in and hits this tank, then nothing can remove this 1 HP infantry, and there's no more fighting that can be done. So I got the recon for free, and this tank is kind of exposed, but there's, like, it doesn't matter how many more tanks there are for Jess, there's no room for them to get in and to attack stuff. And, you know, even if they, you know, you send in, okay, infantry kills this guy, then, you know, what are you going to attack? You're going to attack, you know, Lash units on high defense tiles? Like, no way. So magically, all of our valuable vehicles are on higher defense terrain, even though there's not much of it. But the terrain that there is, we are going to have our vehicles on, and if Jess wants to fight us, Jess is going to have to fight us from the road. Just good positioning. Pays dividends. We don't really have any vision in the middle, so we're going to ignore this city. Additionally, we saw the tank that was here kind of shift down. So now attacking this city is really unappealing because we've kind of won this fight. So we don't really want to start a fight here, because if we do, those tanks will just come here and kill the infantry and we can't really do anything about it because we're up in this corner. So we just kind of abandoned that plan to go for the city. We don't have to do it. That's the value of an option. And then we shift this tank back down. No harm, no foul. We created the opportunity and we decided that it wasn't worth it. So we're just not going to do that. It's another nice income turn to be able to pump out 2 vehicles and then also a copter. We're trying to compensate with our unit count a little bit because we did base skip a few turns ago. So we're just trying to make sure we get a lot of units out. And this position, I mean, it's just it's really hard to attack into this. We're really off the roads. Like, this is a choke. These are high defense cities, so anything that wants to fight into us here is going to end up on the road and is going to get counterattacked from high defense tiles. Additionally, we've got this artillery, which is locking down both this city and this city. So we got 2 infantry for free in the bottom right corner, and we're very difficult to attack down here. It's not a fun area to attack into. Pretty much all these units are covered by the infantry, or sorry, covered by this artillery, or are you know, on high defense tiles where counterattacks against those tiles would be very strong. So we had a good fight, and there's just really not a whole lot of counterattack potential for our opponent because our positioning is just really good. So a whole lot of nothing happened here. One of the nice things about killing the recon up here is now we can be pretty confident that there's no other recon because this tank came over to keep vision of the city. So we're pretty sure that that Jess is flying blind down there, and there was no attack that was possible. And so now these weakened infantry can get out of there if they want. And we'll be taking this corner city. So we've kind of equalized the properties on the map. We haven't managed to secure an income lead, but we have won the fight so far. If we look at the stats, we've killed 5 units and we've lost some infantry HP, and that's it. So that's a great start. When you're fighting against Jess, and this goes for most COs that fight against Jess, if you can win the infantry fighting heavily enough early on, you can kind of force Jess into a death spiral where Jess doesn't have the infantry to contest your captures, and they start having to use vehicles to fight into your infantry, which then allow you to counterattack Jess's vehicles with your own vehicles and start winning the tank fight. So winning the infantry fight can lead to winning the vehicle fight very easily if it is lopsided enough. And so that's kind of where we're going with this. Well, the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to engage in some big tank fight in a way that allows Jess to use a CO power to counterattack and really decisively swing the tank battle against us. That's kind of our lose condition. So we're going to be very mindful of that as we plan our strategy for the remaining turns, because we're not really under any pressure here. We can kind of do whatever we want. We're not engaged with the enemy currently. So it's kind of up to us to plan our next move and figure out strategically how we want to deal with things. And boy, is this the money shot for the recon. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4 tanks. Unfortunate for Jess, because the positioning in this corner, I'm sure Jess would have loved to fight with all those tanks, but because this corner is so, I don't know, constricted, just having those tanks there, there's no room for them to even fight. And we do have 3 tanks in this corner ourselves. So it's not like we are like horribly outnumbered in the tank count, but this tells us a lot. And we've been wondering kind of where all of Jess's stuff is. Well, we see Jess's stuff. So seeing 4 tanks here, now we have a much better idea of where we're strong on the map. Okay, so we see more tanks here than we have, because we only have 3. I mean, sure, we've got another one here, but these are all like at the front ready to fight. So that means basically, by definition, we must be pretty strong down here. Hopefully that makes sense. So because we see more opponent stuff than we have up here, and we also haven't lost anything, by the way, and our opponent's lost a few things. So there's no way that our opponent can have more stuff than us here and also have more stuff than us down here. At least not until we've done like more fighting and traded vehicles and things like that. So now we know where we can afford to be strong. We can afford to be a bully down here, and we can be more aggressive on this side. And we probably want to play positionally and just allow our opponent to position themselves more aggressively on the top side, knowing that if we try to fight here, you're not going to win. Additionally, on this top side, because we won the infantry fight, we see all these infantry, and we know that they are more than 1 move away from the city. So we actually don't care what happens next turn, because we're not going to, we want to contest this city up here. We don't want to let Jess get that, but we know that we don't need to worry about that for at least 2 turns. So we've got some room to breathe up here, and this clarifies our strategy. Helps us make the correct decisions in fog of war when our information is limited. Oh, right, and we know that the recon was still here. So we saw the recon go in here earlier, and we just saw that it hadn't moved, so we know that the recon is still there. So now that we know that we are strong here, we can kind of overextend a little bit, because it's not overextend necessarily, but we can be more aggressive than our opponent expects, because we know that there's no way that our opponent is substantially stronger than we are in this corner. So we're going to eat this recon. Nom 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 nom. Delicious. And that becomes especially good because now we can put a tank in this forest, and we can also delete this infantry for free. Thank you, Lash bonus. Boom. So again, we're getting value out of our Lash day-to-day through good positioning, and we managed to skip this area for the most part. Sure, I mean, we got a recon here, we got an infantry here, but all of our valuable units have made it to the higher defense terrain. Now we see this artillery, and that's fine. It's not great. We're going to lose this infantry, but we had to put something on one of these two squares because we need to use two vehicles to remove the recon here, and so we want to do that from these two squares. So something has to go on one of these two squares to siege the forest. So we'll lose the infantry, but as a valuable sacrifice. And now we get a lot more information. So we see the artillery, which is not in here. And we've also set up a very good position where in this little shape here, because of the forest, it's just really difficult for Jess to attack into this and counterattack. Even if there's like 2 or 3 tanks here, it's just not very comfortable to attack into this. And you'll see as soon as we finish setting up our formation here, we got the artillery on the city for more Lash day-to-day power. So if Lash wants to attack into this, well, you can't hit this tank because it's covered by the artillery. You can't hit this tank because you need to control squares next to the forest to be able to see it. You've got an infantry on a city, and you can't get to this city because I'm controlling this tile. And so, like, this infantry is not going to leave the city there to stand on a bridge and attack a Lash infantry on a silo. So just purely based on our positioning, we're going to be able to secure this city. Like, there's no way that Lash is going to end, or sorry, that Jess is going to end up contesting this city. Purely based on positioning. Oh, and by the way, we got a recon for free. So positioning, positioning, positioning. Having good information, good positioning, knowing where we're strong, where we're weak, allows us to really, really punish our opponent, even though our opponent has not really made any mistakes. Like, nothing really crazy has happened here. It's just really good fundamentals and you know, knowing the map really well, playing the map to our strengths and trying to get as much out of the day-to-day powers that we can, because that's, as Lash, that's what you need to do to win. And now in the North Front, we kind of showed everything up here. I mean, not everything. Like, our opponent doesn't know about the copter and the anti-air, but you know, we showed multiple tanks. So we're expecting that our opponent now, with all these tanks, wants to get aggressive in this direction. So it's time to leave. We are not going to give our opponent a tank fight, because the longer that this match stays with the meters very, very low, the better it's going to be for us. The first power spike in this matchup is when Jess gets her COP. So the longer that our tanks are not fighting each other, the longer it's going to take Jess to come online, and the longer that I'm going to have to keep winning these infantry fights. That's what I've been doing so far, is just winning infantry. I've killed 7 units, lost 0, 5 infantry, 2 recons. So the longer that I am able to just remove these cheap units, not build the meter, the better it's going to be later on. And this turn, we did it again. We base skipped again. This is, I think, more base skips than I've done in a game, and as long as I can remember. But I really, really felt like the only way that this match could get away from me at this point is if there's some sort of disastrous tank fight up in this corner. And the fastest way to kill that possibility is to have a Neo tank. This is something that you see very commonly on matches, or sorry, on maps with weak sides with very forward bases. Marengo is another example of a map like this, where you basically tech up on your weak side, and that allows you to invest a large amount of income in a front that normally would be more difficult to reinforce because there's just not a whole lot of bases that can reinforce that front. So this is a classic way to just make sure that if for some reason a fight breaks out here, starting like next turn, the tanks are going to be fighting into a Neo tank, and it's very unlikely that that will go badly for us. We'll start eating tanks and be able to stabilize that. Not that we're like crazy behind on the tank count, but the Neo tank is insurance, and I think it's worth giving up the infantry from that back base, because as far as I'm concerned, like this game could be over in like 3 or 4 turns if we play our cards right. So you see infantry come down here, lose an infantry. Really great vision. We see everything that's happening here. Tank goes on the city. Thank you for your service, 1 HP infantry. Okay, so this is good positioning from our opponent. Now our opponent is taking both of these squares, and we know that we can't really fight here. But because our infantry fighting was so successful earlier on, our opponent is not actually capturing the city yet. And it would have been much stronger for our opponent to put this tank like here instead and then capture the city, because then there's no way I could contest it in that situation. So I've got another turn to ignore all this, and all I lost for my repositioning was a 1 HP infantry. So that, to me, that's really successful, because the goal on that front was to not fight, and we basically didn't fight. We also see everything. So we see there's 4 tanks up there. We know exactly what's going on. Additionally, we see everything's kind of really far back in this side. And we see the artillery here, and we could actually bust this. In fact, I kind of toyed a lot with bust options on the side, because you can like use the anti-air to kind of remove this infantry. And then that opens options to remove the tank, and then you can send in a tank to pop this artillery and win that fight. But there's another opportunity. And if you'll notice, we have 2 infantry over here. One on the Capcom tower and one on the city. And we saw an infantry go in here. So I'm thinking, if I have 2 infantry over here that I use to kind of cap these cities, and there's probably another infantry over here, like on one of these cities. There's one here. Well, that was cool. I made a box. I'll have to remember how I did that. Anyway, so there's probably 1 infantry in the forest, which we see, and there's probably 1 other infantry over here. And actually, I've got this guy. Well, I did it again. How did I do that? Whoa. All right, I really got to figure that out. Anyway, I can threaten the comm tower. All this stuff's out of position. We would like him to stay in this corner forever. I want to belabor this point a little bit, because it's something it's really important. So often you see a player get an advantage on a front, and the opponent will kind of turtle up. Like, it's a very good defensive position by Jess here, between the mountain and the forest. And I mean, there can be anything up here, right? Like, there can be tanks back here. There can be more tanks back there. There could be copters. There could be tech. Like, this city is 1 turn reinforced from the base. So for all we know, maybe like a Neo tank there for all we know. So there, like, if we attack in to here, there's so many scary things that could potentially happen to us. And if we attack in, we're probably getting CO powered in retaliation. So it's very possible for us to kind of lose everything, or at least lose our advantage on this front in a way that is really advantageous for our opponent. So it's kind of risky. The way that you can deal with situations like this is not by attacking into our very fortified defender's position here, but by forcing them to come out of the turtle shell by threatening other objectives. And attacking in this direction from here has a lot of strategic benefits even beyond this turn. First of all this stuff is like really, really far away. And you're looking like this tank. So if I threaten this comm tower, anything that's like back in this corner literally just cannot reach the fight in time because it's too far away. It's in really good position to fight in this corner, but we already got the city. So there's nothing for us really to gain by controlling this corner for now. Additionally, if we threaten this direction, we have the ability to link up our fronts and then attack their opponent's strong side with both of our fronts at the same time. In war tactics, this is a concept known as defeat in detail. It's not something specific to advanced wars necessarily, but the idea is it doesn't really matter how many forces our opponent has here. If we are using our entire combined army to attack all the stuff that's here, and this stuff just kind of sits in this corner, it's going to be a really dominant victory for me. Even if, maybe overall the total value of our forces on the board is not substantially different, the fight is going to be really lopsided if it's both of my fronts attacking one of his fronts. So being able to join up my forces and attack together is strategically very, very good for me. And we have the potential, well, first of all, we're going to get some more infantry for free. At least this infantry is going to die for sure. And maybe one more. Furthermore, we mentioned in the map review that after the mid game, the early game, this area tends to become very empty. And the reason it becomes very empty is because this base is reinforcing here, and these bases are reinforcing here. And so there's no reason for anything to be in this area because there's nothing to cap. You capped it all already. So if we can remove all the infantry in this area and then threaten the comm tower, it is possible that there will be nothing left to actually fight because it's all going to be down in this corner and it's all going to be over here in this corner. So the juicy middle of the map is going to be open for us. So that is why we are not going to attack in a very foolish way. I'm sure Degis would have a much more colorful way of explaining this concept. But for me, we're not going to try and crack the turtle shell. We are going to go elsewhere. First, we use our recon, and sure enough, there's our second infantry, which makes sense because we had 2 infantry in there. So it's not surprising that our opponent has 2 infantry in there as well. One minor downside to this is we have to expose the fact that we've got an anti-air and a copter in order to clear this infantry off. Because we need to keep this infantry free to actually do the cap on the comm tower. This infantry caps this city. This is purely a decoy, and not even a decoy. It's a sacrifice. It's forcing our opponent to come out and fight us this way. And our opponent sees us move the artillery into these woods, but we don't care if our opponent sees the artillery. It's just a really obnoxious place to try to attack into. And critically, the APC with the block. Now, look at our positioning. So first of all, this terrain is amazing for us. Look at all the vehicles. I mean, even the infantry, everything is on high defense terrain. We've got a line here. And then we're actually abusing this little pipe. So all this stuff now has to attack into APC, infantry, 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 artillery and woods in order to even have a chance to interrupt this comm tower cap. The one downside is there could be like a copter here somewhere, but if the copter comes in, it's purely to suicide to hit the infantry to delay it a turn. So even that is like really, really unappealing. Let me get some more vision to further confirm that this area is just really, really empty. And now we're setting up. We don't really want to contest this. This is too difficult to contest, all the tanks there. Instead, we're going to shift everything to the middle and threaten these properties here with both of our fronts combined. And again, we're moving our tanks in a very safe position. Really, just we don't want a tank fight this turn. And now it's okay for us to get an artillery on this front. Having artillery is very good to pair with a neotank, because if for some reason our neotank gets first struck by an enemy neotank, if we have an artillery following our neotank around, there's a chance that we can kind of get a counterattack and not necessarily have to have the first hit with the neotank. It's just a good strategy in general to kind of follow your neotanks around with artillery. The alternative is to have a bunch of neotank chains, but artilleries are a lot cheaper than neotanks, so it's a much better option. So now we're going to see if we get this comm tower. If we get this comm tower, I mean, it is rough for Jess. We see a neotank here. That's a pretty crazy scout. Infantry kind of has to sack itself. It feels really bad, right? Like Jess infantry sacking into Lash infantry on a city. And again, once again, Lash's positioning is strong enough that Jess just can't attack. Like, Jess is out of position. All the stuff is down here. It can't reach all the stuff here. There's no good way to go into this. And now I've got the comm tower. And now it's like we've barely even fought. 7 infantry, like there's been no tank fighting the whole game, but it's curtains because Lash has 2 comm towers. When is Jess ever going to be able to get this comm tower back? It's such a huge window. And now we don't care about Jess's CO power anymore. We got 2 comm towers. Now it's time to fight with the tanks. Like, hey, let's go. You want to fight with tanks? Like, let's do it. This sacrificial infantry did its job. It killed an infantry. And we send the recon up and, oh, hello there. That's a 2nd neotank. So now we have a lot of information about what our opponent has been building. It's been neotank chaining, which is, I mean, it's not the worst thing to do on this map. But we see two neotanks, and that gives us a very clear indication that we should be leaving. we do not want to stick around here. We got what we wanted, and the surprise play kind of caught our opponent off guard, and now it's time to go. We can cap these cities because there's no infantry in the area for the most part. And this is kind of funny. We know that our opponent is going to be capping this city in the corner. And now that we see 2 neotanks over here, the situation is exactly the opposite of what we saw early on. Because early on, we saw, look at all these tanks up here. We need to back off. We're going to attack down here. Well, now we see, 2 neotanks down here. Actually, now we're strong up here, and our opponent can't contest us in this corner because these neotanks are, there's no way they can help the fight over here. And that's the benefit of having 2 comm towers, since you get to one-shot that infantry. And now we can bust in and interrupt that cap, and we just killed like a bazillion infantry. And now, I mean, what is Jess gonna do? You're gonna attack into a Neo tank? You're gonna send this anti-air over to kill this copter? Just kidding, you're not. So yeah, so now this fight is over. And now Jess cannot contest this at all. All the infantry on this side are dead. There's a ton of caps, and Jess is firmly in the death cycle, or the death spiral, rather, where Jess has no infantry to contest caps, and so the vehicles have to go in to kill the infantry, but then the vehicles die to the other player's vehicles when they try to attack the infantry. And now all we need to do is we just need to unify our fronts. We're running away, getting out of this side as fast as possible. We can't go as fast as we want because we kind of got to babysit this artillery, but even the Neo tanks can't really attack into this. Again, artillery is on the city, so anything attacking these units is going to get really messed up. And Jess has no vision as well, by the way, because all the recons died a long time ago. One thing that could happen is Jess could attack into this corner. So that's why we're kind of shifting these infantry up. We may double back here. It kind of depends on what we see over on this side, because we know that there's a bunch of stuff here. If all this stuff comes this way, then these infantry will head back to defend the city. If this whole death ball goes to this city, then we will just leave this infantry, tell him job well done, and we'll just shift all this stuff up here the other way. But we basically want to keep all of this stuff as far away from the main fight as possible for as long as possible, and then we will just win the fight elsewhere on the map. Recons did their job. Thank you, Recons, for your faithful service. Neo tanks into infantry. It's not the greatest feeling. It feels really bad because this tank hit the anti-air and it's still going to survive because the Neo tank, anything that attacks this tank is just going to get eaten by the Neo tank the next turn. So yeah, this is a really horrific situation for Jess. We can interrupt this recap of the comm tower, and it's actually fine to send 2 infantry to just kill this, because we have really good information from the previous turn. If we go back a smidge. So we see that these 2 infantry, the forward infantry is the one we care about. It can reach here next turn, probably is there, but then that's still not enough to cap the comm tower the turn after. And then also, oops, sorry. So when we see these 2 infantry right here, and so these are also too far away to cap this comm tower. So the idea is, if we kill this infantry, all of the follow-up infantry are more than 1 turn away. So removing this infantry this turn means that the comm tower will not even begin to be recapped next turn, which means we'll still have it the turn. We'll have like a 3-turn window, basically, of 2 comm towers that we can fight with. And now we are starting to look at game end scenarios, because now there is an impossible dilemma for Jess to deal with, where Jess absolutely has to control this area to get the comm tower back, but now Jess is like really weak up here. And the one thing that Lash's superpower is good for is infantry capture defense on cities. And you get an infantry on the HQ and then you superpower, and then you attack it with a Neo tank, and the Neo tank does like 10% damage to an infantry on HQ when Lash is superpowered. So that's kind of what we're going to be setting up here. And we have so many infantry, we can just threaten like so many captures on this side. And there's so few Jess infantry to deal with it that we can pretty much do what we want. And these tanks are on cities, but it doesn't matter because we're just too strong. We know where Jess has all of her stuff. Jess is strong over here, so we will fight over here and just dare Jess to try and fight us. Okay, so we clear that infantry off, and then we're just going to run away. Fortunately, I was a little bit out of position to also take that tank out. I didn't have quite enough stuff forward, but that's okay. We just eat 2 tanks for free. We cap all these cities. We're going to cap this one next turn. And if Jess gives up these 2 cities, then it's a 5k difference. This cap also has to get interrupted. It's at 3, so a vehicle is going to have to come in and hit that. Otherwise, it's like a 7k income difference, and it's rough. So this is firm death spiral, and we're just running away. We don't need to fight these guys. We have nothing to accomplish over here. Now we have successfully unified our armies. Got nothing down here. We're working on moving all this stuff up. We just have 1 giant death ball. Pumping out Neo tanks now just to match our opponent. And now we hit this infantry, which is going to delay any caps here. So Jess is going to have to, if Jess wants to try and take this corner, then Jess is going to have to commit some tanks down here as well. But obviously, eventually, you just don't have enough stuff to send. And I've got infantry to deny this city as well. And we know that Jess wants to try and cap this, so we can spare a tank now to kind of fight down here. But strategically, getting that comm tower was all she wrote. Like, it's just a completely unrecoverable situation for Jess once that's lost. Can't even kill the infantry because no comm towers. Brutal. And so at this point, the game actually timed out because our opponent basically didn't have any answers to the current situation. So we won this one. If the game had gone on for another turn or two, it's possible I would have just ended up with a CO cap, or with a HQ cap rather. Assuming like nothing crazy happened, we can kind of turn on the full vision now to see what the situation was. And you can see like the stuff remaining, like this infantry can't do anything. So like you're looking at like tank, this stuff. This guy's too far away. So yeah, I don't even know what you try and decide to do with those remaining units to try and save these cities. And if you don't, if some of these cities get capped, my plan was to take this infantry and actually not even finish the cap and just go straight for the HQ. And then I can follow up with this infantry to cap the city the following turn. Because we want to get something on the HQ as quickly as possible to force Jess to fight. And if the infantry doesn't get completely cleared off the HQ, you can basically join cap and then superpower, and there's like nothing that can remove the infantry from the city once you've joined capped on the HQ, because even like Neo tanks do 1 HP's worth of damage to infantry when it's Lash superpower on the HQ. So yeah, I think this was a really strong showing from myself here. kind of an opportunistic game. I don't think my opponent made like too many glaring errors necessarily. It was just more controlling the game, being really precise with the positioning, and then snowballing an advantage, and not letting my opponent bait me into attacking where Jess was strong. And then obviously that one oversight with the comm tower is just totally fatal. Because if you lose your comm tower on this map, it's you can't let that happen. Unfortunately, it's totally game breaking to have a mistake like that. So let's run through this one with full vision just to see how things went down. We don't need to linger on this long, and this has been a long video for a game that wasn't especially long in terms of days. We do see that our opponent did go tank first, and actually tank first from the back base. So that's a very kind of passive build. So we did correctly guess that our opponent would open tank, which is why the APC build worked out pretty well. And then we see that our opponent did skip some caps here with this forward infantry. And actually it kind of worked out well for us, because if we didn't position our infantry so aggressively, it's likely that our opponent would have gotten away with it. And they didn't really have an artillery like we thought they might have. But we were correct that they didn't have any vehicles to follow up with. Yeah, just a lot of tanks up here. I think this is a really pivotal turn. So look at all this stuff here. Like there's 3 tanks and a recon, and that's like way more stuff. I guess I also have 3 tanks and a recon, kind of. But again, it's the positioning here that really prevents Jess from being able to utilize all those units. Even though Jess has, 4 vehicles, none of the tanks are even able to attack because the positioning is very strong for the person who's already kind of controlling the high defense terrain there. So, yeah, and so there wasn't actually that much back here, but in this side, actually, our opponent has more tanks than we do. So Jess has 3 tanks and an artillery. And we've got 2 tanks, an artillery, and then like a copter. But we're not like crazily stronger than Jess is. The reason that we won this fight so decisively is because of the positioning, not necessarily the unit count. It all came down to position. There's just no opening to attack here because the positioning is too good. And so now this defensive position is really strong, but there's nothing here. And this position is very strong as well, but there's no need to attack here because the infantry are not in position to cap. So I think this is actually kind of instructive. This copter is actually in position to hit this infantry. It doesn't feel good sacking a copter that is just going to die the next turn. But Jess 1,000,000,000,000,000,000% of the time has to send this copter to hit the infantry. You have to. Because if you lose the comm tower, like it's literally game ending. It's just completely unrecoverable. And so, I mean, I know it's like you're going to be playing from more behind if you lose the copter, but you just cannot give up the comm tower there. And so I think that was the game was very clearly trending in my direction anyway at that point, and I think overall my strategy would have continued to work even if this comm tower gets interrupted. I just retreat. I take the copter and I leave, and we just do the same thing that we were doing earlier, where we unify the fronts, and then we can gain an economic advantage from over here. But once the comm tower is given up, then you can't fight at all. Like the win condition for Jess, where she gets CO power and then she wins a tank fight and then tries to like snowball from there, like that's just totally out the window as soon as you lose your comm tower. So from here, yes, we got the Neo tanks, and so now all of a sudden this side's ready to fight, but we're just going to leave. Now Jess has no vision to like you know, all the stuff is so far back, it doesn't matter. A little bit of death by a million paper cuts, and now and then we got some won a tank fight here, and then we're threatening too many properties, and there's just nothing else to do. All right, so that's going to do it for this one. Thanks everybody for watching. If you're still with me at the end, so I want to thank everybody who's been watching so far. We hit 1,000 subscribers on the channel, which is pretty cool. I only do this channel in my spare time just for fun. I don't do this for money or anything like that. It's just kind of a fun little hobby, and I hope that everybody is able to kind of learn stuff from my games and finds this analysis interesting. But getting to 1,000 subscribers means that I am able to monetize the videos now. So I'm gonna try that. I'm very new at all this. I'm gonna really try to make sure that the ads that I put in these videos are spaced very, very reasonably, so that you're not getting just like absolutely blown up with like a ton of ads. Like this is a 2 hour 20 minute video. I'm hoping that there's not more than like 3 ad breaks the whole video. I don't know if YouTube will like insert additional ones on top of the ones that I put in there myself, but anyway, I'll be learning about this together. But anyway, my point is, just thank you for watching, and any money that I get from these ads, I'm gonna try and find some way to invest it back into the community somehow, whether it's by like supporting the main site through the Patreon, or maybe having some like map bounties, map creation bounties, things like that, tournament rewards, something like that. We'll see what we end up doing, and it's not going to be like a crazy amount of money or anything like that. But this is not my day job. It's never going to be my day job. I'm a developer by craft, so I'm not doing this for the money. But I will find something worthwhile to do with everybody's YouTube dollars and their eyeballs that are watching the ads. So just thank you for your support. Really appreciate everybody. Say hello in the comments. I guess like the video and subscribe. Well, that's what everybody says. I get to say that like a real YouTuber now. It's pretty exciting. And hopefully the next round of this tournament will go a little bit faster than this game. This one really dragged on for a long time. So I'm kind of behind the curve in terms of the rest of the players are kind of a few rounds ahead. So I guess I apologize if you've been waiting for this video to tell you how to play this map. Sometimes you can't really control how it goes. But anyway, I'll quit yapping. Have a great night, everybody. Best of luck in your tournament runs wherever you're playing, and we'll see you next time.